Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammy and Nathan Yeager.
Hello and welcome to Date Forever. In this week's episode, we're chatting about loving the development of your partner in a relationship, sharing core values at the heart of your relationship, the role that happiness plays in a relationship, and how individual personal development journeys can strengthen your bond. But before we jump into that, what's been fueling you up this week, Sammy?
Nath.
What?
I had such a big week last week.
Yeah.
I finished my NLP training.
Yeah, you did.
And
wrapped that up on Wednesday.
Yeah. We dropped the 100th episode of Date Forever.
That was pretty exciting.
I did a sprint towards the end of my quarter and had a quarterly planning session for the business I work in and my other business that I started.
Yeah.
And then on Friday night, I fell in a heap. I was so done. I was like a shell of a human being with no fuel left in the tank at all. Absolutely run dry.
Burning the candles at both ends.
And then what did you do?
Go and make a big, delicious platter for dinner.
Yeah. You took care of us so good. We watched a movie, we hung out, and I had just enough energy to lift wine glass to my mouth. And cheese cracker.
That's all the energy you need, isn't it?
And cheese cracker to mouth. And that was it. That was all I had left.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. So thank you for fueling me up when I could not take care of myself.
No worries.
And what about you? What fueled you up this past week?
Yeah, so that night was really great. I did really enjoy just spending some time with you and eating some delicious food and drinking some delicious wine. But the other thing that fueled me up as well was that I purchased myself a new bike over the weekend.
I swear every week your fuel up is about bike riding.
It's not every fuel up. Surely not.
It's just what works for you, isn't it? It's what fuels you up.
It must be, yeah. But I had been looking for a bike for a little while and just happened to stumble across exactly the right thing. And
Facebook Marketplace for the win.
Yeah, definitely. I was actually looking at exactly the same bike from a different seller and managed to get it for a really good price and went and picked it up, and it's been really great. So I've done my first couple of commutes to work as well this week, which has been good. And just looking forward to getting a few more Ks in the legs.
You and your bikes is an absolute love affair.
It is a little bit. Consumes a lot of my energy.
Yeah,
but refuels a lot of my energy too.
So, something else that we want to share with you before we get into today's episode is that our online course, Couple and Team, the doors are not always open. We only take intakes a couple of times a year. And if you're listening to this live, that is happening next week.
It is. Yeah.
What? So Couple and Team is an online course, totally self-paced, and it's designed to help you have a better relationship. When Nathan and I first got married, we were in our early 20s, and honestly, we had no idea what we were doing.
No, we were fumbling our way through lots of different things, and we were only tackling problems as they actually came up, as opposed to doing anything proactively.
So this is the course that embodies so many of the relationship lessons and life lessons that we've learned in our almost decade of marriage. It's also a culmination of some incredible tools, tips, tricks, insights from the thousands and thousands of dollars that we've spent on personal and professional development.
Yeah.
If you have found your person and you are in love with them and you want it to stay that way for a really long time, we cannot encourage you enough to invest in that relationship and add fuel. If a relationship runs out of fuel or resources to replenish that fuel, it ends. And we don't want that for you. So we encourage you to go check it out. It's at a very, very reasonable price point. And we're going to have a huge amount of activities and bits and pieces going on next week to let you have a little bit of a sneak peek, ask any questions you might have. But Nathan and I know, and Harvard knows, that the quality of our relationships dramatically impacts the quality of our lives. So if there's one thing that is worth investing in to create a happy life, it's your relationship. And this absolutely is the best place to learn how.
So make sure you prepare yourself for what's to come, because really, you just don't know what is coming down the track. So check out everything that we've got going on next week.
You'll find everything that you need to at fuelcollective.com.au and, of course, on socials, fuel.collective.
But now, here's this week's guests.
Tonight, we've got Declan and Shev joining us. Declan is a happiness researcher, author, keynote speaker, and founder of BU Happiness College. He is passionate about empowering people with proactive, practical, and engaging strategies that increase happiness. As the founder of BU Happiness College, Declan has been recognised for numerous awards, including being a finalist for Business Leader of the Year, a finalist for Specialised Business of the Year, and winner of the 2020 Social Enterprise of the Year. When he isn't working, you find Declan boosting his own happiness by hiking, playing country music on his guitar, playing basketball, and spending quality time with his friends and family, especially his wife, Shev, and their 2 dogs, Teddy and Daisy. Shev is a dog-loving, cake-baking, caregiving lover of life, having been described as an Italian nonna at heart due to her pride in taking care of those around her. Shev's highest priority in life is putting smiles on other people's faces. She's enjoyed a diverse career path from being an award-winning chef to a travel agent to now leading in the customer service and product fulfillment role at a local startup organisation. Shev's favourite things to do include hiking, playing board games, reading a good book, and hanging out with her husband Declan and their 2 dogs, Teddy and Daisy. Welcome to the show, you two.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Now, this is pretty special because this is Declan's second time on Date Forever.
Correct.
And Declan, you are one of 3 guests that we've ever had back for round 2. So we only invite the very best back.
I'm honoured. I'm very honoured. And not only I'm grateful to be called one of the very best back, but bringing my better half with me this time.
Stop it.
So she's going to blow you out of the water and we're going to have her back.
I mean, you heard in the intro, Italian nonna at heart. She's got a lot of care for people.
Yeah. So, Shev, this is your opportunity to correct everything which Declan got wrong last time around. So,
Yes, I'll be on it.
Yeah, before we dig in, if you haven't listened to that episode with Declan, I highly encourage you to go back and listen. We did a deep dive on happiness, how we can influence it and move the needle. It was a great episode and it's one of our most downloaded. So I'm really excited to continue the conversation with what you described as your better half. So let's see how we go. Tell us, we've heard your side, Declan. Shev, how did your relationship kick off? How did this all start?
So we both met through a mutual friend in high school, and we started just getting together and playing charades nights, which was so much fun. And then we just hung out more together, and then we ended up getting together in my final year of school, and Dec was in university. And then we've been happily together ever since.
And how long have you been together now?
We have been together, it'll be 10 years this year together, and married for 6 years this year.
Yeah, wow.
amazing.
So the 2 of you have had a bit of a journey to getting here in front of us on this podcast, but we know that you do things a little differently and you live a very designed and intentional life, and that plays a big role in your relationship. Can you tell us a little bit about your methodology and how you do it and what that means to you guys?
Yeah, I suppose the big thing for us over the years, and obviously being together now for, I didn't realize it was 10 years this year. That's a long time.
Best start planning that anniversary date.
Yeah, must be doing something right there. I think, especially in our age, we've grown and changed so much as individuals over the last 10 years. And I know a big part of, from my perspective, our growth in our marriage and in our relationship has been learning to, I guess in a way, re-fall in love with each other as the individuals we are now, rather than trying to hold on to the individuals we were when we first met and first started dating. Like, I know in our early 20s, I went through a bit of a patch I was working on my own well-being with one of my coaches, and I remember saying to him, like, she's just not the girl, that I first fell for. And he was like, no shit, Sherlock, you're not the same guy she first fell for either. Like, of course you guys have changed. And I think since then it's really helped us embrace this idea, which is why I love, the idea of dating forever, right? It's the idea of like re-falling with each other, recognizing the changes in each other, but then having those core values and goals and principles that we hold to be true that we share. So like a big one for us over the last few years is we've become, I'd call us practicing minimalists now, I think. Would you?
I'd agree. Yeah.
So we got rid of most of our possessions and we're living in a converted 1967 caravan that we've turned into a tiny home. And it's big life decisions like that, right? Like the big core values and principles of how do we want to live that we make sure we have in alignment. But then it's also, as I said, that idea of re-falling in love with each other. It's seeing the differences between ourselves now as what we were 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Can you back us up to the decision or what was going on in your life and relationship before you made that pivot and that decision to minimalism?
Yeah. So where were we at? We were living in our first home that we bought together. And I think the process of moving into the first home we bought together was kind of the first part. I think when everyone moves house, they have that moment of like, why do we have so much stuff? Like, why is there so much here that we need to pack up in boxes? And we found that in that first year of living in Kestrel, there were boxes that I swear we didn't unpack for 12 months.
Almost the whole time.
Yeah, if not, maybe 5 years.
Yeah.
And we went, what's in these books? Why do we even need it? And I know you started watching a lot of the minimalist stuff and reading a lot of their books.
Yeah.
And it resonated with you and we were sort of learning about that. And I guess, it kind of brought us back to having more conversations about principles and memories and experiences and values and goals rather than things, like rather than just acquiring more for the sake of acquiring more. We started going, well, hang on, what actually matters to us?
So you did mention a couple of times that you do have those really shared core values. So how did you go about actually discovering what your core values were kind of as individuals and then as a couple?
I suppose for me, obviously with what I do for work at BU Happiness College, we talk about values so often and so frequently, but I know that they can shift over time as well. So I tend to check in on I call it my blueprint for a happy and successful life. It's like if I was to write the recipe card for a happy and successful and thriving life, what are the ingredients that go into that recipe? And for me lately, it's been a lot to do with nature and adventure and memories and experiences and music and things that really light my soul on fire. I think for you, correct me if I'm wrong, you started first exploring values with Amy when you were working with her as the coach?
Yeah. So I was reading a lot of personal development books and just doing general finding out what really felt true to me. And I did a couple quizzes online, but then I worked with Amy, one of the coaches at BU, and she really helped me just navigate where I wanted to go and what really felt true to me. And then Dec and I, we spoke about it a lot. We would have little date nights and goal setting nights where we would talk about individual goals that we had and the values, and then we found that a lot of them actually aligned, and then we spoke about what shared goals we could have together to make a happy life.
Is that something that you do periodically? Do you have a rhythm or a practice around that, or is it whenever the conversation kind of pops up?
Yeah, not really structurally in terms of a set amount of times. It's more I know we did one really spontaneously, 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago, yeah.
Shev came home and I was like, right, quickly shower after work, get changed in something that makes you feel fantastic, jump in the car. I'm making us a booking for this restaurant that we've spoken about for years and never prioritized going to. And she's like, I don't even think you can get a booking on the night. And I'm like, well, I'm going to try. Let's see what happens. And then she just squeeze us in at 8:30 at night till 9 o'clock, some ludicrously late time. And so we got ready, drove in.
There's that nonna thing.
Yeah, right. And so drove in, sat down, and as we're having that meal and that experience together, that's where we started talking about we kind of had a conversation around life buckets. If we were to divide our lifespan into 5-year buckets, we're getting to the point of the end of one bucket and the start of a new bucket. We're coming to the end of our 20s and start of our 30s, and we're starting to think, well, what do we want that bucket to look like? And what experiences do we want to have in that bucket? What matters to us at the moment? And it was just nice to have a conversation. I don't know, I find having those conversations that are really deep and meaningful and important, if you can do it in a place that's fun and lighthearted and enjoyable, it kind of, I think sometimes it takes a little bit of how daunting it is. It takes it off the table. Like sometimes I think people want to have these meaningful conversations. They want to have these deep dives. They want to understand their partner more, but it can be a little bit confronting and daunting to do that and to have those conversations, especially if you're not used to them. So I know for us, I mean, I've been doing personal development for 10 years. You've been doing, involved in working on yourself for a while, and it's still just so much nicer to go, let's tie this to an experience at the same time and kind of make a night out of it.
So I don't know how open you want to be, but is there anything you want to share from what you've put into that next bucket?
I mean, the big one for us, travel. There's a lot of travel coming up.
Yeah.
Lots of travel coming up, especially after the last 2 years of not being traveling. I suppose the big one for us, which we've still been having a lot of conversation now to figure out, is that transition point of when we want to become parents and what memories and experiences and goals we want to pursue before becoming parents, what ones we want to do after becoming parents. Like it's that real sort of transition phase. And it's a big decision to make. So, I'm a big believer that at the end of the day, anything around that conversation is Shev gets final call, because she's the one who, needs to bake the bread, you might say, and then, deliver the goods. So, I think at the end of the day, I'm like, look, I think we have very open conversations about what our desires are here and what we would like, but the final call on that rests on Shev, and I trust her to make, decisions around that.
Yeah.
I love that idea that you touched on before about taking some of these bigger conversations outside of your own home and into these other environments. Because I know that we definitely have different conversations when we're outside of our home. I think there's just so many things that can distract you when you're in your own environment and when you're in your everyday kind of space. Whereas as soon as you take yourself out of that and do start doing a few things that are a bit more novel, I think it just changes your thinking and kind of widens your views a little bit more too. Yeah,
I love that. And that's one of the things that Nathan and I have committed to in terms of our date nights. And we try and do what we call our 2x2x2. So every 2 weeks we go out for a date, try and every 2 months, try and go for a night away. And then every 2 years in the current global pandemic, but normally twice a year to have a week away or have a holiday. But that first one, that a night every 2 weeks. It's amazing how quickly that 2 weeks goes. But the conversations that we have when we're outside of our environment, it doesn't have to be at a fancy restaurant like the two of you did, but for us, it could be anywhere. But those fancy dinners, they bring up some good chats. It's like, we've got to make the most of this.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I know the other one that we really enjoy is we're both quite into hiking. So going out into nature, I don't know, I just find there's something so grounding and calming about that environment to then just, I don't know, I know for me personally, whenever I'm out in nature hiking, it kind of gets me a little bit introspective anyway. And I start thinking about my life and where it's going and what I want out of my life and how fulfilled I am. And so because I'm already in that space anyway, it brings up those conversations, and it's a nice place to sort of talk about them while we're just going for a stroll.
Yeah, it's nice and easy.
And it's also a low to no cost activity that you can do together.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is really nice. Hey, something that I wanted to go back to there is I think we're a few years older. We're in our early 30s now. And Nathan and I have been together since 2007. But we've had the ongoing conversation about becoming parents, not becoming parents, adopting. Do we want children in our life? How does that kind of roll? And if you'd asked us on the day that we got married, we would have been all yes, of course we're going to have children. But we got married at 23 years old, and that conversation has evolved, and we've been in a perpetual state of maybe in 5 years, maybe in 5 years, maybe in 5 years, and now we're saying that for the third time. And one of the most romantic things that Nath has ever said to me was, if you're not ready, we're not ready. And I just really want to honor how beautiful that is, that you've given that space to your relationship as well.
It's funny, a lot of big conversations in life, we don't have when we get married, because we just assume that we're on the same wavelength and that we will always be on the same wavelength with it. Finances is another one, and where are we going to live? And kids is a big one. And I think that, we were the same. If you asked us when we got married, we were quite young as well. Was I 21? 22.
I was 21.
Yeah, you were 21. And yeah, same thing. If you ask, you'll be like, yeah, we definitely want kids, and we want this size of a family, and this is what we're going to do. And I think it goes back to what I was saying before about like we are changing as individuals all the time, which means our perspectives and our beliefs and our opinions and what we want out of life is changing. And as long as you're having consistent communication and conversations with each other about those changes, it's okay. You can navigate it. I think the mistake I know I made in our relationship for too many years was I didn't talk about those changing desires and goals and wants and needs. And so it felt like we were ending up on different wavelengths, right? But you start talking about this stuff and you go, oh, okay, like I'm having second thoughts about this. So are you? Like, wow. Well, like, okay, maybe you're not, but I am. But let's figure that out together. Like if we can at least get it out on the table and out of our heads, at least we can. Yeah, I remember one of my coaches early on was like, you need to stop thinking that your romantic partner is a mind reader. Like just because she cares about you and loves you doesn't mean she knows what's on your mind. Like talk. And yeah, it's been very valuable advice that still to this day we're reminded of.
Yeah. I think there was like a time where we weren't really talking about those like big goals that we had. And so we were kind of going off into different directions. And then I don't know what ended up happening with like us deciding to sit down and have that big conversation and communicate to each other. But once we did, we were like, why have we not been talking this whole time about these big things in our lives? And I think that was really pivotal in our relationship. So from there, we made it so that we would constantly communicate everything to each other. And it's made it so much easier.
What do you think it was that was preventing you from having those conversations? Like, was it a skill set thing? Was it time? Was it fear? Like, what do you think it was?
I think for me, it was a little bit of fear because I had always thought that our relationship would go a certain way. And when I started feeling like I was wanting like slightly different things, I was nervous that if I brought it up with Dec that it would break down the relationship. And we were so in love and we are still so in love, but I was so fearful that bringing up and talking about what I wanted would have a relationship breakdown. But I don't know, what was it for you?
Yeah, I'd say fear, like insecurity as well played a bit of a role for me around, and also sometimes like, to be honest, lack of clarity. Like I was struggling to communicate what I wanted because I didn't bloody know what I wanted at the time. You know what I mean? Like I was young, inexperienced, trying to figure out what happiness meant to me. This is before I did a lot of my personal development work and like really learned about what happiness meant to me. But yeah, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted, so I found it hard to communicate. It's funny around the fear thing though. Like I was having a conversation with one of our members the other day on a similar sort of vein as this. And I said, look, you're going to have that conversation in one of two ways. You're either going to have it proactively, intentionally, and in a healthy way, or you're going to have the conversation reactively, emotionally, and after it's been bottled up for months or years. So your choice. Like at some point this conversation is happening. And I remember as I was sharing that with him, I was like, this is something that 23-year-old Declan needed to hear. So it's nice to have in a position where I'm like, I will choose the proactive, intentional, emotionally healthy approach to getting these things out in our relationship and on the table so we can talk about them rather than the bottle it up, bury it under the rug and hope it fixes itself approach.
Yeah. I reckon it was about maybe like 4 years into our marriage, maybe 3 or 4, we realized that we were just like very reactive and stuff seemed to be like happening to us as opposed to us making conscious choices and decisions. And I'm not even sure how it sort of came about the first year, but we did what we now call our annual game plan day. And we just took a day and we're like, okay, what do we want next year to look like? What's the priorities? Like what's most important to you? What's most important to me? What are the big events and things that are coming up? And that day is something that we've done every year since. And it's changed shape a little bit. And now we have an actual agenda that we move through every year. But one of those things is what we call our grand vision. And it's our 10-year plan. It's where we want to be in 10 years. And we formulated it a few years ago and we obviously evolves. But this past year, we sat down and I read it out and we were like, does that feel true? Is that where we're going? Is that what we want? And there was probably 3 or 4 things in there that we were like, no, that's no longer right. And I really like for us the annual check-in on like, are we still on the same page on these really big, longer term things? It works incredibly well for us. So I encourage couples to figure out whatever that rhythm is for you, whether or not it's annually or more frequently, to have those big conversations, because shit can change.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always come up in your week to week, day to day grind kind of check-ins.
And I think the interesting thing about you mentioning that things had changed was that it was actually kind of scary to realize that some of those things had changed. And I think if we had realized that in isolation, we may not have actually brought that up with each other. But because we were working through it together and gone, oh, actually, that doesn't really feel quite right. But it's a little bit scary that we no longer want that thing, or that we now want something completely different. I think it gave us an opportunity to be able to chat about it together and then kind of realign where we actually do want to be going.
Yeah, I think it's a really beautiful way to approach it. Again, it's like it echoes what we were saying before, right, around that, are we being proactive or reactive with this? And so, yeah, to be able to bring it to the table before it's at a bubbling point, before it, overflows, gorgeous.
Yeah. So you've both kind of mentioned your personal development journeys. So did they both kind of start at the same time and take the same form, or did you both kind of run your own journeys?
I'd say we're both still doing our own journeys.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's what I do for a living, so it's very, I'm very immersed in it. It was funny, though, when Shev's journey started, and I say this to all people now that come into the BU Happiness College, I say to them if they're in a relationship, particularly if it's one that they've already told me is a little bit rocky, I say to them, I go, look, as a heads up, when you start really intentionally working on yourself and your happiness and understanding who you are, you're either going to grow as a couple and you're going to sort of lead that growth because you've got more of the tools and the emotional intelligence and awareness there, or you're going to grow apart. I've never seen it in all the years we've done it. I've never seen a relationship stay the exact same because one person in that relationship is changing so much. So the dynamic has to change to accommodate that. And I'm like, I don't know which way it's going to go. I'm not going to make predictions. I don't know if you're going to grow stronger together or grow apart, but I need you to be ready for that. And that experience is not just true for our members that come through BU Happiness College. It was true for us. I remember when I really got into personal development, I started to feel like we were growing apart. And I started to, but that was also a reflection of my expectations on what growth looked like at the time. I was like, well, hang on, she's not growing as fast as I am or in the way that I want to see her grow. And it's like, who am I to make up those rules? You know what I mean? Who am I to say that this is the perfect way to grow? And so when I let go of that and was just like, you know what, let her do her own race here, let her do her own journey, let her grow in the way she wants to do. And that was around the time when you were like, hey, I really want to actually learn more about this. But we set a really clear boundary with each other. And I don't know if you remember saying these words to me, but I still tell people about this to this day. She said to me, I need you to be my husband, not my coach. Because I'd become so immersed in what I was doing and I loved it. And I was like, oh, I think this could help you because you were struggling with a lot of self-doubt at the time and a lot of anxiousness and your emotions. And I was like, oh, I have so many tools that can help. But she sat me down. She's like, I don't need you to be my coach. I need you to be my husband. And it was just such a clear boundary. It was so powerful and profound. And that's when you were like, look, I want to learn this stuff, but there's a clear line there. And that's when you started working with Amy, who was one of the coaches on our team and still is one of the coaches on our team at BU. And it was really nice for me to witness your growth and development and see you really get a grasp on your emotions and your goals for your life and figure out who you are as an individual without me playing that professional role. I got to be there and support her as her husband. I think that was really nice for me to experience.
So, Shev, I would love to know from your point of view or your perspective, what did you experience when Dirk went on this big, rapid growth trajectory? What was that experience like for you? Did you feel like you were standing still, or was that not your experience at all?
I think I was very much on the sidelines of it. I was watching him dive headfirst into it, and he was doing so much amazing work on his own personal development. And in the beginning, I kind of felt like I wasn't ready yet. So I kind of just witnessed what he was doing and was interested a little bit and was, asking questions. But I was still very much like, he's doing this for him and I'm not ready to look into it for me yet. And it did take a little bit of not pushing, but encouragement from Dec for me to realize that I did want to work on myself. And so I remember that conversation that we had. I was very much like, I need you. I don't want you to be in work mode or, personal coach mode, because even if I was coming to him and, venting about something that happened in my day or talking about something emotional, and I remember he'd want to try and find a solution straight away, and he'd want to like help fix it straight away. And I was like, no, just let me cry. Let me be sad. Let me be worked up for a little bit to give me the space to learn to move through that emotion. So it was a little tricky in the beginning on finding out like how both of our personal development journeys would go side by side. But I think once I started on my journey, then we could talk more about like, all the things, all the changes with me. And then it was an amazing talking point where we could like share our own individual experiences on what we had learned, what we had grown with. And then we just, I think, became stronger for it.
And that's something like still to this day, something that I find helps me, because I don't know what it is, whether I've heard somewhere it's masculine, feminine energy, all that sort of stuff, but like that desire of like, okay, there is a problem here, I can solve it. Like I will step in and I will fix this, and let's get this done and dusted, and let's keep moving forward. And as Shev mentioned, sometimes that's not what she needs. And so something that I've been practicing more and more in our relationship is asking the question, what does support look like to you at the moment? Or like, what are you wanting from this conversation? Like, is this a conversation for ideation and solutions and coming up with things that we're going to take forward as actions? Or is this a conversation for you to be able to get it off your chest and just feel heard and supported and voice what's on your mind? And I think before, when I wasn't asking that question, I had in my own mind that if I can't solve this problem, if I can't help you overcome this challenge that you're facing, then I'm failing you as your husband. And so it's so nice to have that permission to be like, actually, that's not what I need right now. Like, that's not what support looks like to me right now. I don't even want that. And so it's like, okay, cool. Well, sweet. Now I can actually meet you where you are and deliver the support that matters to you at the moment, and give you more space as well to solve your own challenges and to address your own happiness. I'm really embodying more and more, especially the last few years of our relationship, like it is not my responsibility or job to make you happy. Like I will contribute to it, I will play my role, but I'm not taking end responsibility for that, and vice versa. Like I don't expect Shev to make me happy. And I think that dynamic of knowing what support looks like to each other, knowing that at the end of the day we can contribute to each other's happiness, but we're wholly and solely responsible for our own happiness at the end of the day, has been really healthy.
There's two things that I want to go back on there. Was one, I think that question is like a game-changing thing to implement in your relationship. Babe, do you want support and solutions, or do you just want to have a vent?
That in itself is game changer.
Such a good question.
But then the other one was, we want to echo what you said there, is like in our world, we refer to them as fuel tanks, and like how full is your fuel tank?
And I've got my self fuel tank, Nate's got his, and then we share one for our romantic relationship, and we share one for our house, and we share one for our wealth and finances and all those kind of things. But of all of the ones that we share, I cannot fill up Nate's self tank and he can't fill up mine. That's my responsibility to take care of me, and I can't outsource it to my partner, and vice versa. And it's incredible how many couples we talk to who have tried to outsource their well-being, their health, their fitness, their personal development, their goals, their ambitions to their partner. And I don't think anybody really wants a tag along in their life, right? They want a co-pilot.
I like that metaphor of the co-pilot because, again, this is a little bit Zen Buddhist of me maybe, but it's this practice of like non-attachment. I even remember I put up a video about this ages ago on Facebook, and it went a little bit semi-viral, and people were like very mixed bag responses on how they felt about it. But I remember us having a conversation shortly after we got married, and us having a conversation and said, hey, I don't actually need you in my life. Like, and I don't want you to feel like you need me. I was like, this is not a necessity. And if we go non-attachment, that's sort of Zen Buddhist philosophy of like, I'm choosing to have you in my life because you add value to it, and you add complexity to it and beauty to it and things that I would not otherwise experience. And I genuinely enjoy life more with you around, but I will be okay without you. And I think that was a bit confronting for you, I think, at first.
You saying that again, it's like, oh.
Yeah, but for me, I'm like, I want you to be responsible for your own happiness, and I want me to be responsible for my own happiness. And if the worst comes to happen, I'm in touch, as every bit of wood in this house. But if something unspeakable were to happen to either of us, because I care about you, I want you to live a great, happy, fulfilling life if I'm not around, and vice versa. And I think, I don't know, particularly in Western society, we still have a very ownership approach to relationships, particularly marriages, where it's like, the whole idea of finding someone who completes you, I'm like, I'm complete with or without you. I'm a great person. You're a great person. You're complete with or without me, but we add something to each other's lives. And so I think that idea of choice rather than necessity is still really freeing to me, but I think it's still a little bit confronting to you.
I think that conversation around whether or not it's need your partner or you choose your partner, it is interesting to assess, like, some couples that we talk to, they say, like, of course, divorce is an option. Divorce is always on the table. We could always step out and go, nah. And then there's other people who look at that and go, well, divorce is never an option. So either which way you frame it, like, divorce is a choice. I'm choosing to be here and I'm choosing to be in this relationship and I'm choosing to make it as great as possible. Or divorce is never an option. So I'm choosing this relationship and I want it to be great and I want it to be awesome. So I think it's whichever way you frame it, hopefully you come out with the same outcome, that you want to create an incredible, healthy, happy, thriving relationship that you want to be in, not because you don't have any other options.
Mm-hmm. And realistically, like, that power of choice, there's so many choices on the table, right? Like, divorce, you mentioned, is one. I mean, adultery and cheating is another. What percentage of couples end up doing that because they're not having these conversations and actually talking about whether they're happy in their relationship or not, so then they go somewhere else because they're missing something in their relationship or whatever it may be, right? Choosing to have an unfulfilled, loveless marriage and just sticking with it because of the fear of divorce or being perceived as a failure is a choice. Like, everything is a choice in your relationship and in your life. And so I think if we take radical ownership and responsibility of our choices, again, I think that's more rewarding. I don't know, if you were to say to me, like, I don't need you, but I'm choosing to have you, I'd be like, well, that's pretty fucking nice. Like, now I feel even more valuable because it's not like I've been forced upon you and it's just like, oh my God, I need you to survive. It's like, no, I'd be fine without you, but like, it would hurt, but like, I'd get through it. But I want you here. Like, I like having you here. Please stay.
It's nice when you put it like that.
Maybe a little bit more explained than just the blunt, I don't need you. But I want you.
So as we kind of come to the end of this, I would love to know, what does romance and dating look like for the two of you?
I would definitely say we love a really good board game night, even a board game morning. We just love board games. But having those little, like, special date nights. So we love having, like, cooking lessons with each other, teaching each other, like, different meals. We love getting out in nature and hiking, especially with our crazy, crazy doggos. And just doing, like, spontaneous things, I guess, like, on a weekend, just going for a drive, going to the beach, going for a walk, catching up with friends. But the really special nights, for me at least, are, say we just randomly, we stay in and we cook a really nice, beautiful home-cooked meal, and we might watch a movie and just cuddle up. Like, those are the really lovey-dovey nights that I love. What about you?
You probably guess her love language from that. I was going to say, for me, like, romance and dating look a little bit different. Like, dating to me is adding to our memories and experiences bucket. So, like, anything that we have that's a shared memory and experience that years from now we can look back on and be like, remember the time we did that? Or, like, what about that experience? That time that it all went wrong and we somehow still made it through and we drove through that storm. And, like, I think dating for me is, how do we keep adding shared memories and experiences, things that we can both reminisce on together and that we can experience together. Be it big things or small things, like it's in the little day-to-day moments, I think you can still create shared memories and experiences. Romance for me, on the other hand, now I want to caveat this by saying my top two love languages are acts of service and words of affirmation. So if you want to romanticize the night and make me feel all kinds of special, tell me you've taken a chore off my chores list and that I'm looking good in what I'm wearing. It's that simple.
I love that.
You taking notes, Shev, or you got that one down pat?
I know them.
So as one final question for you both, what would your number one tip be to keep a relationship fueled up?
Communicate.
Oh, you stole mine.
Oh, I got it right out of you.
Oh,
I saw you were about to say it, and I was like, I'm stealing it. I'm jumping in. No, but honestly, like, just open, honest, frequent communications. Have the difficult and scary conversations. Have the uplifting and exciting conversations. Have the conversations about future goals and things that you want to work towards. Have the conversations about things that you've experienced recently that you think maybe fluffed your feathers a little bit and you want to actually go, hey, like, maybe we need to talk about this. Actually, I think one of them, a new one that we're adding to our communication toolkit, I think Shev pinched from you guys. Is there anything I've done this week that hurt you or anything I've done this week that you wanted me to apologise for?
Is there something you'd like me to apologise for?
I heard that on your podcast and I was
Boom.
like, this question is fantastic.
Yeah. What a conversation starter.
Yeah.
I love it. So,
Yeah.
Communicate.
If you're just starting with that one, good luck. It gets easier with that question, but the first few times we did that, it was uncomfortable. But now we just do it every week and it's easy.
Yeah.
And you lean in and you get the feedback and you don't do it again.
To dig a little deeper into that tip, is there a tip for how to have those conversations? Is there a tip for creating the environment, the frame, the intention? How do we have them?
I think what helped us in the beginning to communicate was getting out of our like everyday surrounds. So like not starting those conversations at home or in your shared spaces, like just going for a walk or doing an activity that kind of took your mind off it. So you were focusing on something else and then just maybe sneaking in a little question or sneaking in just like a thought that you might have. And then that can help to start those uncomfortable conversations or even just start those conversations in general. And just, it doesn't feel like, right, we're sitting down and we're talking about the hard stuff, or it's like, oh, look how pretty this bird is in this tree. But also, I didn't like that you did that last night. So I think that helped us.
Yeah. And I think for me, like the big ones are, if I'll summarize good communication, clear is kind. Shout out to Brene Brown, one of my heroes. Love her. Right? But like so often we beat around the bush when we're communicating because we're worried we're going to hurt the other person's feelings. But all that leads to is misunderstandings and grey zones. And then someone was like, I thought I was doing what you asked of me. And you're like, well, I didn't really ask what I wanted to ask. So now we're back in this situation again. So be clear, be direct. The other one that I'm a huge fan of for practicing healthy communication, lead with emotional impact, right? Rather than like context and story. So if we can build our emotional literacy and awareness and go, hey, I feel X when something because something, and I would like to talk about it. And for the listeners, feel free to literally pinch that as a fill your own adventure story. So I feel insert emotion when insert behavior or experience because insert reason what I would like to talk about is, right? But if we lead with like emotional vulnerability ourselves, it opens up the other person to be more vulnerable. Again, shout out to Brene Brown. She calls it go in without all the armor on. Be brave enough to go in with the armor off and let your partner actually see you and sit with you and resonate with you. And if you lead by example, practicing emotional vulnerability and honesty, hopefully they'll come to the party as well.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. That's a much deeper, more meaningful tip than communication. So thank you for going that little bit deeper. I appreciate that. We've loved having you two on the show, and I really hope we get to hang out IRL sometime soon. But to say thank you for having you on the show today, we've made a contribution to Life on Land. So they protect, restore and promote sustainable use of all of our ecosystems, and they manage some forests. So that contribution should help look after about 1 square metre of the Daintree rainforest in Australia. So thank you so much for making that possible.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
No worries. So Declan and Shev, if people want to connect with you or learn a little bit more about you, how should they do that?
Oh, you're famous on TikTok now, aren't you?
No.
Oh, Shev, are you? Yes.
No, I would not say I'm famous on TikTok. I have a few TikToks through work. And
that have gone huge. Go to Shev's work TikTok for a good laugh, everyone. Willow by the Sea is the name of it.
I think that's pride. I think that's what he's emanating here. Pride.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So there are some funny videos and there's some embarrassing but also informative videos out there. So, yes, if you want to see me on TikTok, Willow by the Sea.
I am going there the minute we hit stop on this interview.
Oh, my God.
I do an army crawl out of the warehouse in one of them. And I only had to do the army crawl about 4 times to get the take. And I did hurt my knee, but it was worth it.
Because now you're TikTok famous.
Yeah. Why not?
And I'm not a TikTok celebrity. So you will find me on many other platforms, though. If you go to Instagram, it's Declan Edwards _BU, or you can go to BU Happiness College for Instagram or TikTok. And you can go to our website, which is www.buhappinesscollege.com to learn more about the work we're doing in growing global happiness and empowering both individuals and organizations with the right tools to manage their mind and their emotions more effectively.
Amazing. And some of those tools really are amazing. I've taken the scorecard particularly, and I've been to the free workshop. Highly, highly, highly recommend investing just a slither of time and energy into figuring out what makes you happy and how you can have more of it in your life. So thank you so much, the two of you, for joining us, letting us take a peek behind the curtains into your relationship and what makes it awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.